or as more often said, whether or not we have free will, we better tell people they have free will or else people are going to run amok. This is the first panic everyone has. And oh my God, you can't go telling people there's no free will. People will run amok. Just like if you conclude I can't be held responsible for my actions, that's going to have some bad consequences. Just like the general assumption that if you decide there is no God and thus no omnipotent force that could hold you responsible for your actions, people will just run amok. And what you see at the free will end is a small literature where when you psychologically manipulate people into feeling that there's less free will than they thought before, 30 minutes later, they're more likely to cheat on a test. They're more likely to be a jerk and make a selfish offer in some sort of economic gain, whatever. When you decrease people's sense of free will, people will run amok. And when you look closely, that's not what the really meaningful studies are showing. Don't look at some freshman Psych 101 person who, like, you've now spent 15 minutes and try to manipulate them into feeling less than free will. Have someone come in who says, yeah, actually, I haven't believed in free will since like my early teenage years or something. And you put them up against someone who believes fervently in free will and in the justice of people being held responsible for their actions, and they're both going to be equally highly ethical in their behavior. And as the studies show, you take somebody who has long thought that there is no God, and you put them up against someone who is highly, highly observant and believe that human goodness comes purely in a religious perspective, and they're both going to be highly, highly ethical in their behavior. It's the people who are in between who just, apathetic or couldn't care less or whatever. Why are we talking about something that's boring? Are the ones where you have the lower average levels of ethical behavior. Why is it that people who have always thought that we are masters of our fate and have to be held responsible for our actions, and people who have long thought we are nothing more or less than our biological lot, both turn out being highly ethical in their behavior on the average, because they've both had to sit there and think, wow, where does human goodness come from? Why are we here? Is there meaning? What does it mean that we might be alone in the universe? Is there... And like, you go through all of that and you've done the hard work. It almost doesn't matter whether you conclude there is a God or there isn't one, where you conclude we're captains of our fate or we're purely biological machines. It's having done the hard work about what is the basis of our goodness and badness from, and you're going to wind up in the ethical end. And that's what the studies show. So no, you don't have to worry that people are going to run amok if they stop believing in free will, if they're taught it in the right way. If they're taught that believing that there's no free will has some very, very strong moral imperatives that come out of that. If you teach that as fervently as you would teach them, you have free will and God is watching you and will judge you on the choices that you make.
If I were told that I suddenly didn't have free will, and I think that this is maybe what I'm about to say is going to channel one of the thought experiments put forth by philosophers in your book, say that an evil neuroscientist had put a chip in my brain, and I were told that my behavior was actually being controlled by somebody else, I can still imagine that I would be doing everything I could to resist, even though I guess it's paradoxical since I'm told that I can't resist, doing all sorts of amok-related things just because I really don't want to be subject to the consequences of running amok. And I imagine that's what's going through these people's minds, if not consciously, when they're told that they no longer have free will. They're not going to just suddenly go crazy and rob Trader Joe's because they don't want to experience the consequences.
Yeah. And what we're also seeing there is, somebody telling you, if need be, over and over and over and over, that there's no free will. isn't going to be like some god awful 500-page book isn't going to do. Yeah, there's strong intuitions to overcome, and like everything is embedded in all the other influences out there. So yeah, that's it. You're not switching, throwing a switch for something.